Hi, everyone. I'm Nicola Hamilton, RGD president, and I am here checking in with a few designers and studio owners based in Atlantic Canada. Hi, everyone. Welcome,
Hello.
welcome.
Hi.
You'll get a chance, if you haven't already, to see their studio tours, but we're going to talk a little bit about the industry in the Atlantic provinces. Let's start by having you each introduce yourselves. Farron, I'm going to get you to kick it off.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Farron Da, and I'm based in Moncton, New Brunswick. And I'm a freelance graphic designer and principal of Farron Design. I've been in the industry, in the design space, at least for the last 20 years, in-house, agency work, even some design education. And now I get the great pleasure of working with various clients as a freelance designer.
Awesome. Welcome, Farron. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Tanya, do you want to give us a little bit of info about you?
Yeah, sure. I'm Tanya Duffy. I'm based in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and I am a studio owner. Studio is called The Details, and I'm the creative director and principal, and we have a team of designers working on all kinds of different projects. And that's pretty much it.
And you've been at this for a while now, right? You're heading towards a decade?
Yes, I started in graphic design in the year 2000 at the New Brunswick College of Craft and Design here in Fredericton. And then I went to Emily Carr and did an undergrad in communication design there and finished that up in 2007. So that's kind of my background in design. And then I started the studio back here in Fredericton when I moved home. This is home for me in 2013. Trying to remember.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, almost 10 years of having the studio.
That's incredible. Tyson, do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, my name is Tyson Hines. I am the co-founder and creative director of District Design Co. We're based in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and we're a multidisciplinary design firm. So we work across all kinds of spaces and sectors. So anything from websites to product design to we do a lot of packaging to retail spaces like restaurants or stores or offices. So it is we try to mix it up, and yeah, we do work for everything from your local donut shop here to multinationals across Canada and the US. So it's a pretty we like to both keep the kind of work we do and the clients that we work with pretty varied. We've been lucky in that.
Nice. How big is your team right now?
We are at 5 people, people full-time, and then two freelancers.
Nice. Just helps us to get a frame of reference. Let's kick this off by talking a little bit about the design community in your area. So who is your community and what does that design community look like? Anyone want to kick us off?
Yeah, I can start with that. So the design community in Atlantic Canada is relatively small, and we were just talking about this before we jumped on our call, just how there tends to be small centers in different regions, which is funny because none of us are really that far away. But it is, unlike some bigger spaces in Canada, it is, we just have a smaller critical mass of designers. So I think probably a really good source of that community is things in Halifax anyways, is things that happen around the NSCC design program or NASCAD, the communications design program. Those are great. But yeah, in general, I think that is sometimes a challenge in our area.
Yeah, does it feel like design is centralized around Halifax and Atlantic Canada, or does it feel quite dispersed?
That's a good question. I think I don't even know anymore because I didn't go anywhere or leave New Brunswick for 2.5 years. So previously to that, I would say, I don't know that I was paying attention to Halifax as much as maybe I could have been, and was more focused on connecting with people where I used to live in Montreal and Vancouver, but also going to design thinkers in Toronto or various conferences in other places, New York a couple of times, because those are all like 1 to 2 hour flights from here. So maybe Halifax is just a little less exciting. I gotta drive 5 hours as opposed to go to New York for for the weekend or something. So connecting with industry events, I think I did more in bigger centers than here. Although I know that there are some design meetups, maybe in Moncton and Halifax, that I've heard of. I just haven't been involved.
Yeah. What about you, Farron?
I spent my, I guess, first 7 years of my design career in Halifax, and I felt, when I think back to it, I feel like for the size of the center that it was, there really wasn't many design agencies there, you know. And when I would think about even Moncton, was considerably smaller, they felt like they had the same amount of agencies or design resources, you know. So now I don't know. I guess, like, I'm like Tanya, I haven't been in that mix in Halifax for quite a few years, but you know, and so I'd be curious to learn more about the state of that in terms of the amount of agencies available compared to the size.
Sounds like I need to leave Fredericton, pick up Farron on
Me,
the way
exactly.
to Halifax.
It's or vice
So, do you
versa.
want
We can
red-
start in Halifax.
Yeah.
We can start in Halifax and work our way up to Fredericton. That's fine too.
Yeah. Do you want to run an RGD event while you're there?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why do you think that is? So the sort of thinking about Halifax and also the Atlantic provinces, where there is, you know, maybe not as much industry as some of Canada's bigger cities, but definitely a lot. Why do you think there aren't as many studios or agencies there? Or what needs to exist to sort of spring some new businesses?
You know, that's it's a very good question. I mean, I think there's a whole range of factors that tie into it. It is partly scale, obviously. You know, you have clients with bigger budgets, and they might, or you know, they might be more likely to invest more in design than a company with a smaller budget potentially, or you know, they might have a bigger audience as well. And then just on top of that too, you know, there is definitely a challenge with, you know, people come out of school, and then if there's not a job for them immediately here, they'll go to a bigger center where there are more likely to be jobs. So, you know, it almost sometimes feels like there's like a bit of an in-between space that is not very accessible to firms here, or you know, or any designers, the design community as a whole.
Mm-hmm. There's also like, there's not a ton in New Brunswick anyway of like large private sector business. So I don't know for you guys, but for me, we do a lot of government. And so that stuff, you know, comes and goes, not everybody likes it. A lot of more org-based work, but I think if you were living in a place that had, you know, more private industry and bigger private industry, then you need design and agencies to support initiatives under that. And here it might just be like a little bit of a different focus, and stuff's a bit smaller for sure. That might be part of it.
Yeah. Farron, what about for you as somebody who's sort of freelancing and supporting individual projects or other folks? Does that echo your experience at all?
I think it doesn't. I mean, I was just having a conversation with another freelance designer, someone who is also well known in the industry here, at least. And it was a conversation around, you know, there seems to just be enough for everybody, you know, at least from my perspective. And I'm not speaking on terms of on an agency level, but every freelance designer who is at least intermediate to advanced to senior that I've kind of connected with, and I do connect with here, everyone's busy, you know. So, and I don't know if it's because we are tapping into the community we have or the network that we have here locally, and or if it's you know maybe small businesses who are clients, they like to work with their own kind, or they like to keep that within this region. I mean, most of the work that I do is regional based, certainly. So yeah, I don't know if that's the same sentiment as what others may be feeling.
I think a bright spot, at least in Halifax, and maybe in other parts of the Maritimes too, is also around like the startup community here, which, you know, there are all kinds of exciting new ventures and businesses kind of bubbling up, and a lot of them understand that design and branding is very important to help them break through and differentiate themselves. So that, I think, has been, in and it's its own community, but it's a community that also values design, both in terms of like the interface and branding and identity. So yeah, that's, I think, been something that's a relatively new thing that's kind of outside the domain of what traditional kind of agencies might have gone after.
Yeah, I think as commerce grows in parts of the country too, we'll see an increased need for design as well, right? As more industries sort of grow and put down roots in different parts of the country, especially as city centers become really, really inaccessible, especially to startups, right? They're expensive places to start a business. We were having a really fascinating conversation in our sort of pre-call, but about design literacy in the Maritimes. Do you want to sort of kick that off, Tanya?
Sure. So I guess I was saying that sometimes there is maybe a bit of a lack of design literacy in the past, and I do think it's getting better. As to what Tyson was just saying, especially with, startup and tech do have some of the best examples of branding, and they need it, right? So they kind of can't get away without doing it. But I think that the Maritime seems to have a little less focus on design and brand identity as a whole compared to other bigger city centers where design literacy might be just built into the culture a bit more. I spent some time in Montreal, and it's very much, it felt like very much like a place where people knew what we did for a living. You had to explain it a little bit less. Where people here might kind of simplify what we do, and designers are notoriously bad at under explaining, I think anyway, what they do, because it's a hard question to answer. And people often say, oh, so you make logos? And it's like, yeah, and a million other things that help problem solve. But yeah, I think that we could do maybe a little bit better job at educating our audiences here as to the value of what design brings to the table, especially in early stages of business, as opposed to coming in late and fixing problems that they've kind of discovered through not using design in the beginning.
Yeah, I saw you nodding along, Tyson. Do you have something to add?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking back. So I think the first thing I'd say is that the region has come a tremendously long distance, a tremendously long way in the last couple of decades. I'm dating myself a bit, but when I went to NASCA, I had very little exposure to design, like zero essentially. And it wasn't until I spent a year studying typography in Europe, and I was exposed to like stuff I had not even imagined was possible. And I think that's probably the experience of a lot of people who've gone away and come back. And of course, now with the internet, everything is much more accessible. The appetite here in terms of like people's clients' appetite for that varies, obviously. I mean, I think probably the thing that people struggle with the most is understanding the strategic value of design. That might be the biggest gap here relative to some other places. Like the attitude is, we had clients who would just come to us and be like, I'll bleep out the just design the effing store. We don't want the whole backstory behind it. Don't give us. We don't want the rationale. We just want logo here. Point of sale over here, some storage over here. Don't overthink this. Basically, it's like, well, the goal of something that is well designed is that it'll actually work better for you. And sometimes there's a bit of a gap there. Yeah.
I was going to say, I have to overthink it in order to simplify it for you. Like I've got to get there to come back.
Yeah.
I think from my experience too, it's a generational thing. Like I feel like I've even experienced this, working with one of my clients where those in the in the association are older, and it's like a checklist, like just check the box that we have a website and we have all these assets, right? But I find that younger people coming in, I just feel that they are valuing design, and I don't know why that is, but they are seeing the value in the strategic portion of that much more. And I also feel here in the region, companies are influenced by others. So when they see that whether it's a competitor or not, but when they see good design and they see somebody on their level that are investing in that, it kind of influences them.
Yeah, I mean, I think to Tyson's earlier point, exposure is a big part of that, right? The more exposure you get to really incredible design work and design thinking and case studies, the more sort of interested and invested I think you become. Europe especially has deep archives that we can dig into. Here in Canada, it's not as old of a business. Yeah, what do you want to say?
We also haven't invested in our storytelling from a historic sense about design here. Maybe it's different in Nova Scotia, I'm not sure, but in New Brunswick, I think that we've done a really great job celebrating artists, like visual artists and craftspeople. Like people in general here tend to know, if they're at all visually interested or interested in history, tend to know painters from the region, and we celebrate them massively. And we have their work in national galleries, and like New Brunswick's actually kind of really well known for its visual art. But we do actually have some designers working in New Brunswick in the 60s who were doing things that were published in international volumes for logo design. But these are untold stories. I'm actually working on a side project about it. Yeah, but it's super interesting. I went to school here for 3 years and I'd never heard of any of these things. So part of it might be just that we don't have that shared history where we do in the other visual arts sectors. The provincial gallery here is doing a good job of starting to bring design into the fold and putting it into the gallery spaces. There's been a couple, there was a type exhibition recently, and I felt oh, this is kind of unheard of to see type on the walls in New Brunswick in an art gallery. Putting it into that context just elevates it immediately, right? This is the status of something that you would put next to, a Mary Pratt in the next gallery. So it was an interesting exhibition for me. And I think that the more that stuff happens, the better it's going to be for our industry.
I wonder if that speaks to the level, the humbleness of the people here as well. I don't need to be known. It isn't there, that's okay, And so I wonder if that goes back generations where these stories aren't told because, they might have been okay with them not being told. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, for sure. There's definitely that mentality here. You don't want to toot your own horn too much. And people don't like it when you do.
Right.
That has to make it challenging to promote your business and to promote your services, I imagine.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I don't know. I don't know if that's across the board or not, but I definitely think it's a challenge, because I think a lot of natural maritime humbleness does play into how you go forth into the world, for sure.
How do you go forth into the world? Sorry, go ahead, Tyson. Yeah.
I was gonna say it's a double-edged sword, because I mean, usually once you start working with people, they really appreciate it. They like the fact that there's kind of a no BS attitude in terms of, and we tend to be collaborative. If I'm stereotyping very broadly about maritimers, but yeah, sometimes if you're pitching yourself outside of the market, you kind of need to rethink that a little bit and be like, yeah, I have to toot my own horn a little bit more than maybe I'm used to.
Yeah, I guess I was just curious on what sort of tools you use to market your businesses, and what maybe folks elsewhere in the country might be able to learn from a more maritime way of being.
Sounds like you were going to take that one.
Yeah, it did.
We don't do a whole lot of marketing, and it's because we've been lucky that we haven't really we've always kind of been busy. Capacity is a bigger issue than than anything. But we do sponsor some things. So there's a music festival here that we do the work pro bono, and then we kind of tie ourselves in with that sponsorship wise. And that's been really nice because it's like helps align our values a little bit too. Like it's like we love the event. So I've kind of, the marketing initiatives have been kind of more based on like, how do I tie myself to things that I think are important, as opposed to just sort of advertising or social media. Like that's totally stuff that other businesses do better than I do. But I think it's also that humbleness bit as well. And you get busy, get your head down, and you kind of forget about, oh yeah, I should probably have an Instagram post or something like that. But for me, word of mouth has been the biggest tool. And it's, every client that I have knows me or knows me from somebody that knows me. And sometimes it's funny because people on my team won't even realize. I'm like, no, that's my cousin's friend. Or, like it's such a small city here anyway, and the province is small, but where I am, it's really small. So sometimes I hide those relationships a little bit just to keep it more formal with the team. Like they might not realize that I grew up with that guy's brother or whatever, but there's always a connection. So
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's the most of my business too, is through word of mouth. And I think the Maritimes, we can do that easier, much easier, because it's like less separation between relationships and between people here. And so, I mean, you're right. It's a matter of, is there a need to do heavy marketing for yourself or for the business when relationships, if they're good relationships with people, referrals are pretty valuable and used quite often here.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. There's no 7 degrees of separation here. There's like maybe 2 and probably 1, but I think what is good about that is there are actually, there are, I think you can sometimes start those relationships here. So you might work with a client here, and that could be a springboard to client elsewhere. So, we've had clients who have a subsidiary here, and then, they like the relationship and they love the work we do. So you'll end up working with their national office or with their US, the US head office kind of thing. And I think probably I guess I'm kind of echoing what everybody else here is saying, which is that it's very organic. There is sometimes, I think there are things that kind of bubble up through work you've entered in award shows or things that you posted on social. People will see that and be like, that's really cool. I think one of the best things about that is that it actually elevates the level of design discourse a little bit, because people would be like, that packaging that you did, I really love that, and I want to do something similar, almost like not necessarily realizing that kind of stuff happens here in a way. They think that you have to go to another place to get that. And so I think I don't know if that's like a new business thing, but kind of putting your best foot forward and putting the word out there sometimes will hopefully attract similar kind of projects.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is that your design community and your sort of professional and personal relationships overlap a bit more. So your community is not necessarily designers, it's clients as well, and pals and family. And that's kind of magical.
Special. I don't know if you folks get this too, but if I don't personally know clients starting out, if they're referred to me through a friend or another client or some other relationship, usually by the end of the project, we are friends. And that's something that's different than when I was working in other places. Like, I think all of our clients and our friendship, relationship, personal, professional, totally overlap, and in a good way. Like, it could be seen as maybe a negative, but it's not, because people here that's just kind of the mindset. I think, like, we don't really separate that out, business and personal very much. So
yeah, a lot of people do say that. They're like, you'll see people talking about, our clients are our friends. And I would say in this region, it's actually pretty true. So it's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. I want to wrap this up with just a sort of future looking question. What are you sort of investing in now or wish you were investing in now that would do something for the Atlantic design community or your business? Tyson, do you want to kick us off?
I have not thought of an answer for this question, but I mean, I kind of organically, I think probably the biggest challenge that I would say we're facing is that, you know, to Tanya's point, kind of like building a pipeline for new designers and new talent, and actually having a lot of the things that helped me get to where I am today, we're learning from other people. So how do we provide those opportunities to people who are entering the business? I would say that would be, if I was to sort of pick one thing, that would be the thing that I think is probably most important for creating more of a design community in the region.
Yeah.
I just mentioned, I think something similar to what you had just mentioned, Tyson, is like, there's a couple of things I'm working on and thinking about as well. And one of them is being able to actually create or have available a physical space where, you know, designers that may not be, working with an agency or a freelance or want to come and learn from maybe more seasoned ones, to be able to just come in, not as an agency, but more as like a shared space where we have our own clients and we can help each other and we can learn from each other. Even somebody myself who's seen a lot, right? But there's just so much more that I can learn from, not just people on my level, but people that are coming up that, I mean, there's just amazing creative people that can design much better than I can. And it's just great to be around that, you know. And back to the whole idea of the events, you know, because we talked a little bit about these design, you know, get-togethers and things like that. And so there's another designer that's kind of raised that question to me. Hey, how come we don't have something on a general, you know, like on a basis where we can, you know, kind of come together and get to know others in the community? Because it is not small, and it would be fairly easy for people to do that. So just noodling some of those ideas around for sure, to be able to just bring people together, you know.
I think a clubhouse is such an important part of building community, for sure. Like somewhere that you can just show up to ask your question, or to seek advice. Yeah.
Totally.
Tanya, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, in terms of like investing, I think just on a more like personal, just about us, we're investing more time into documenting processes, so that when designers that have less experience come, there's more tools to help navigate things. Because I think something I've learned over the last couple of years, and the switch from remote to in-person, to remote to in-person, and all of that, training folks and working remotely is a challenge, I think, for me anyway. But training people at a school on the way that we want to do things is something that's just become more important. And I think it was easier in the past, but as things get busier and the team gets bigger, and that becomes more of a challenge. So we're working on investing some time into that, developing processes and documenting them, and just being a little more formal about stuff, instead of me just verbally explaining something, kind of creating systems so that when people come in, they have a bit more of a resource. And then the other thing is, I don't know if this is even applicable, but creating an archive of our work is something, like a physical archive, that we're kind of actively trying to sort through. I think it's really easy for 10 years to go by and you have a whole stack of printed things or digital things that have not been addressed. And, you know, if all of a sudden you were to start over tomorrow in some other career, that stuff, it's part of our cultural landscape and it needs to be sort of identified as such. So I'm working towards kind of doing that, so that, you know, someday I can just drop a box off at the archives and say, here's what I did for the last 30 years. And because they'll take it. So that kind of thing has become a little bit more relevant and important here. But it's totally like insular, like it's just for us and for our own purposes. But I feel like maybe, you know, down the road, if somebody wanted to research one of the companies or organizations that we were working with, at least there might be a record of some of the stuff that they did through how we communicated it.
Yeah, I mean, documenting our design history is the only way we sort of preserve that for future generations, right? The work that was done will inform the work of the future, and that's what helps to sort of build that deeper archive of knowledge and design literacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for sharing videos of your spaces with us, and for joining me here to talk a little bit about the design industry and community on our East Coast. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Hopefully I will see you all in person soon.
Yes,
Thank you
looking
so
forward
much.
to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, folks.
All right.